last week? I don't even know. Actually, I think it's worse than last time. All my fault. I take full responsibility, but I thank you for joining us this evening for, again, another live episode of Race Matters. We had an engaging conversation 2 weeks ago when we last aired regarding our family's influence on our perceptions and perspective on race. And so tonight, we're going to get into the two other questions. Well, hopefully we'll get into two. But one we're going to start with is about how our high school experience impacted our perspectives on race, and what were some of the particular experiences that we may have had or witnessed regarding race, interracial relationships, or maybe even some issues within our own race. So that's all on the table tonight, plus another topic that we'll get to regarding, similar conversations. But just want to put the first question out there. My name is Sharon Thomas. I am one of the hosts of Race Matters. I am also the owner and executive producer of this and all of the shows on the Full Life Communications Network. And we broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube. This show the first and third Thursday of each month at 6 p.m. But we're doing the last Thursday of this month because next week, which will be the first Thursday of October, we will not be on. So we traded that off for the last Thursday in September. So I'm going to throw it over to my co-host so they can introduce themselves and share whatever it is that they would like to share about themselves regarding being a host. So I'm going to throw it over to Mariana. Mariana, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana. I met Sharon through a program that we both are part of with school. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Pennsylvania, and I am Moldovan. Romanian was my first language.
Thank you, Mariana. Stephanie? Stephanie, can you hear me? Are we having audio issues?
It looked like she froze up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, Rosalina, take it away.
Hey, guys. Hi, guys. My name is Rosalina Anderson, born and raised in Camden. I go to church with Sharon. That's how I met her and met the young ladies on the line once we started this group chat, which is a very good group chat about race matters. Like I said, I grew up in Camden. I'm half Spanish, half Black, and have my different experiences, even with my job that I used to have that I retired from. So I think it's going to be a nice, good conversation. A lot of popping information coming out on us. So
we're trying to get Stephanie back. Something happened with her video, so she froze for a minute. So when we get her back, we will put her back on the screen. But for now, it's the three of us. So before we get started with the dialogue, please post this feed, share this feed rather, so others on your page, others in your friend group on Facebook or on YouTube, don't forget YouTube, can watch the broadcast. So just click the share link and then you can share it to a group. You can create a watch party, you can share it to a page, however you choose, and then others can be informed. And also too, if you would not only like our page, Full Life Communications, would you also follow our page? So therefore, if you follow it, whenever we're on, you'll get a notification that says that this show and other shows that are produced on Full Life Communications Network, you'll get a notification when they are shared. Also, if I am looking down when you're talking, it's not because I'm uninterested. It's just because I am trying to do double duty. I'm sorry, I'm trying to show Stephanie in the feed now. I think I did it wrong. There we go. There she is. Glad you're back, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah, you froze with us for a minute. But we're glad you're back.
I don't know what happened, but thank you. Went to get some
that's
water.
Okay.
No kidding.
That's okay. Stephanie, after I finish sharing this, then you can introduce yourself, okay? So again, I'm trying to make sure I'm seeing who's responding as far as engaging with us with comments and questions. Also, to again, post the feed on your page, and I'm going to, and ladies, host, please post the feed on your pages as well, and I'm going to do that. So after when Stephanie's talking, I'm going to do that. So again, it's not that I'm disinterested; it's just that I'm trying to, produce the show while I'm hosting the show. If that That's what it's called. That's not my lane, but I'm doing it until other things happen. So, Stephanie, take it away and introduce yourself.
I am Stephanie of Italian descent on both sides. I have had two careers, one in advertising and one as a TV producer, so both in media. And I'm happy to be joining these conversations. I thought I could take some of my experience and skill set and add hopefully to positive conversations and maybe helping move discussions forward.
Excellent. So yes, as these ladies have shared, I knew them. We all know each other now, but I knew them each individually in separate arenas in my life. And so, knowing them as I have, I thought that each one of them had a lot to add to this particular dialogue regarding race, and had various experiences in their childhood, adolescence, adulthood that could bring a lot of information, education, experience to this dialogue. And specifically, and most importantly, they were not afraid to speak up and have a conversation about race, which is, that's why the tagline is a safe place to have the hard conversation. A lot of people aren't really willing to speak about race in a healthy way. Let's put it that way. And so we are being the first example of how to have a hard conversation, but have it in love. And so I knew that these ladies were well capable of doing that, and they had a lot to share, and it would be very engaging. So that's how we came together. And I'm so grateful that they agreed to host the show with me, because it wouldn't be the same without them. I mean, I could sit up here and talk about it all day long, but it's so much better having these ladies with me sharing their education, experience, insight, etc. And we lost Stephanie again, but when she comes back, okay, yeah, joining us again. No problem, no apologies. Listen, Stephanie, I am, not inclined with this technology at all. So listen, whatever happens, happens. This is what live streaming is all about. What happens, it happens. I used to do live television, and it was just like, you just got to go with the flow. That's it. There's no redos and retakes and edits in live streaming. So,
of course, to add, I'll just share this with you all. Everything you're saying is coming out double. So I'm going to do my best.
Oh, wow.
You're an echo. You're an echo, an echo, an echo.
Echo
Is it
5
still
times.
doing that?
Just tell me, it's fine. It'll be hilarious. I can do it. But if I answer 5 times, you'll know why.
Okay. Well, you're coming across fine to us. So, and what I'm going to do to maybe hopefully, I don't know, not solve that, but just deal with it in this moment, I'm going to throw out the first question to you, Stephanie, so you can answer first, and won't have to wonder, like, is it my turn?
Before I disappear.
Right. We're talking about how our high school experience impacted our view, perspective, etc., on race, and what some of our either intra or interracial experience were with those we may have gone to high school with, or even if we didn't, but during that period of time, if we didn't go to high school with them, maybe we knew people, but during that age, what were our relationships like with people of other races, and those within our own race? If there's some examples that we have that clue us in to our intra-racial issues as well, not just our interracial issues. And so Stephanie and I went to high school together. We went to a private school on the main line in Pennsylvania, outside of Philly. And that's how we know each other. And it was a good experience. It was a predominantly white private school. We had 16 people in our graduating class. And was it 4 Black people, Stephanie? 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, 5.
Well, one joined us. Yeah, one joined us. The
exactly.
last
like it might be somebody in and out. One.
Right. So you see the racial makeup there. But so I'm going to throw it over to Stephanie to answer or give her thoughts on that first question.
Okay. So I will start with my perspective in high school with my own ethnicity, and then I'll link it to others during that time period. I know we talked about our home life a little bit last week. So of course it's all still interconnected because I'm hearing things at home, and combined with the experiences I'm getting back in high school, that's how I'm assessing everything. So I have my one view. I had mentioned, as everyone knows, I'm Italian. I had always felt to be in my own group because there really weren't any other Italians in the class until later, which was our friend Lil, Sharon, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
In grade school, not so much, maybe one at one point. And it was so funny. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but I always felt that others had a group and I was not part of any particular group because, again, there weren't other Italians. So the humorous part too with that was, I have to say, my mother was always like, and I'm making up this name, Susan Van Dyke's mother's grandmother is half Italian. And then I try to relate to Susan Van Dyke. I was like, your grandmother's half Italian. And nobody knew what I was talking about. Even if they were half or a quarter, they didn't have the stinky cheeses in their fridge like I did, because they were other mixture, which is great.
Right.
But I couldn't completely share. So even in facts, and my mother was always hysterical. She was always sussing out the one. So again, it was no big deal. But I even thought, like, Sharon, your group, you as a Black woman, I thought you had your group, and not, it was fine. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not, because I actually was part of, you included me, and it just was hilarious. So
Right.
it wasn't anything bad. The only tough thing was, and this started a little bit in grade school and carried through high school, I did have one teacher, and this is how I came to sort of ask more about my Italian heritage at home, who had called me a wop. And it was during one, and just a couple other times through the years, a dago or a wop, and little comments. And I had really adored her, and I actually wanted to be favored by her. And I was just like, when I'd kind of go home and say, what's a wop, and blah, blah, blah. That's how I found out, which, by the way, WAP means without papers. And it was stamped on a lot of the birth certificates of Italians who came here, the immigrants. So that did crush me. But I never understood, I just thought it was me. And I actually never told my mother, because as you might imagine, my mother was so-and-so's girl is half, but she'd be like, because if I did say something, she'd go right to the principal. I didn't want to be embarrassed. So I kind of kept that to myself because also this teacher was very favored. So that's the short form, if you can believe it, of some of my experiences. I have more to say, but I'd like to turn it over to everybody else.
Wow.
Rosie, what about you?
That without papers is crazy. I never knew what that meant.
Isn't that interesting? I know.
When you said WAP, and I was like, "Ooh, wow!" Because I just knew it was a negative connotation. So I was like, "Wow, they called her that." But then when you said it, I was like, "Whoa!" So it had more of a meaning than I could have ever thought.
Right, it's crazy. And
just papers.
Just quickly to add, that story about being called a WAP, because this is actually part of being not part of a group. It was St. Patty's Day, and one of the teachers had given out Erin Go Bra pins, like good luck. So I had my proud green pin, and she had said to me, "What are you doing wearing that? You're not Irish, you're a WAP." So that's how that started, and that's why it was always like, oh my God, I'm not part of any group. Again, not a tragedy. That's how
that Karen would have been cut today.
I know. Oh my God. 2 minutes.
That Karen might have got cut today.
Right.
But I wonder, did she think it had another meaning? Because I'm sure she knew you were born in this country. So how does that work, being born here and being with that document?
But see, that's where ignorance come in. You use a word that you don't know what the meaning is, or
exactly,
you don't know the orientation of it or why it was used. Because again, I've heard it so many times, never knew what it really meant.
But you knew it was derogatory, though.
I knew it was derogatory. I knew it was an offensive word.
Right. Yeah, not you. I'm talking about the person who used it was Stephanie.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they made it derogatory.
Yeah, but
Right.
for me,
So,
like I remember in high school, like now I went to school in Camden, so we had a little bit of everything. Had a little bit of everything. So and back then a lot of people did keep to their own ethnicity. They you saw kids in groups and stuff like that. Um, I'm not going to say there was any hostility as much toward any other ethnicity because everybody hung together with themselves, and everybody did their own thing. But I do remember them called, now you were called that, but I remember being called the N-word Rican.
And what?
N-word, the N-word.
Yeah.
Finish it with Rican, like a
What is?
Puerto Rican. It would start with the N-word and end with the Rican.
Oh.
So N-word Rican. That's what we were called back then. And it was like, you get slapped in the mouth. I mean, if we having a problem, you might get hit. But that's what we were called, and Ricans, because we were half black and half Puerto Rican.
How were they? Would it be screamed at you? How did you receive that? Like, how was it given, and what did you do?
I mean, it would bother us, but you know what? When you today, again, like I said about your Karen, today you would have gotten cut.
Right. Today you.
Back in the day when you were called out of your certain names, it was like you just ignored it, or it was said so many times that it was a part of what was going on. Depending on who said it and what the heat of the conversation was, is what took it to different levels.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it really depended on the environment that it was set in. But I mean, we were called that, but we just shrugged it off. We just kept it moving,
Yeah.
because it was said so often at times, and it depended on who they were throwing it at. So, but I mean, even back then, we were in high school and stuff. My sister was dating a white guy that lived across the street from us, and see, growing up like that, like sometimes we think, you're like, you would think you're acting black and you're acting white. We were so like family oriented with all of the kids that grew up together in the neighborhood, that we just saw each other as, kids in the neighborhood, friends, this and that.
Right.
So when my sister was dating him, the black family that had moved on the block had called him an N lover. Now that's a black family.
Oh wow.
And then call her a hunky lover. I mean, the words that get thrown out, at you because you're offended at what you see, and it started a fight on our street. It started a kind of a street fight between us and them.
Wow.
And it got to the point where we had to go to court and everything because they lied and said we pulled out pipes and tried to beat them with the pipes. And one woman said that the young man that my sister was dating hit her in the face with the pipe that had cement on the bottom. We told the attorney, if she got hit in the face with a pipe that had cement at the bottom, she wouldn't be here telling you about it.
Right,
it's impossible that she'd be standing here telling you about it. So we won the case and all, but then not long after that, that same family started a street fight with the Asian people that lived next door to us. Because we were, like I said, we grew up with so many nationalities, and the Asian people that live next door to us, we had fun with them. We had some issues with them that we had to check them about. But other than that, everybody grew up, the kids grew up playing together, having, running around the streets together. And, so you had your issues.
Mm-hmm. So, Rose, I'm curious with that, because you say you all grew up on the same street and then there was school. So a lot of you, were you more likely to like play together on the street, but then when you go to school, then
Nope. We all did everything together. Matter of fact, it was funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when we would have birthday parties and stuff like that, we would all be at each other's house. So when we would have birthday parties at our house and we would invite all the kids on the block, my aunts used to take pictures and take it home to Ohio with them, because even though they worked together, when they left work, they never associated. So they wanted to show their coworkers and stuff how we did things here, in Camden. Yeah. when they left work, they would act like they didn't know each other. They would, they would not, and they would say, I got to show my coworkers these pictures. And we were like, why? Because look, all of y'all are in the house having a birthday party. They would never associate with each other once they left work at where we live. And we were like, what? So it was surprising to us how that would be. We couldn't grasp it because we grew up together. So.
Wow.
Now let me say this, and I apologize, and I'll stop after this. But let me say this: when we did move on our block, we were the first Black family as our street saw it, and my mom told us about a story how a petition was going around the street to get us off of it.
Oh wow!
And what she did is one of the neighbors who did like her brought the petition to her and said, "Look at this." They're passing it around. They're signing it. They're trying to get you put out the house.
Oh my God.
So, and this is what I was told. Now, I was only like 2 years old, 3 years. I was a baby, so I don't remember it. But my mother was telling the story how she took us out, lined us up on the lawn, and made a ruckus so all the neighbors would come out. And she said, "These are my kids." She named us, each one of us. And she said, "These are my children. If you have a problem with it, come see me. But I better not see this letter go around one more time."
Wow.
And she had to confront. She had to confront them because
did it end the letter? Did it end the petition?
It did end it. It ended it because she told them all. She was like looking at each of them. "Listen, I will come after you.
Right.
Don't mess with my babies."
That is terrible.
Good for her.
So yeah, when we first moved on that street, it was a get them off of here, get them out of here. We don't want them here. So, yeah.
That, we had a neighbor next door, an interracial couple, move in, and my mother had them over for dinner, and they were so nice. And she was saying, she was Black and he was white, because the neighborhood would not accept them. They actually didn't accept us either. It was another neighborhood. Not, it was okay. It wasn't like horrible, but they didn't want us at first because it was one culture. I'm not going to name it. It's fine. They were nice people too. But then when they came along, they really were, they were just not nice to her. I don't think it was trouble. And then they eventually moved because they just didn't like it. Like, that makes me so sad. It's really terrible. And one of the actresses on The Housewives was just saying, and because she's like in a ritzy area, and she said, when I went there, I introduced my Black sons because I don't want them to be afraid in the neighborhood, which is so sad and terrible.
Yeah.
How about you, Mariana?
Yeah. Well, it did progress over time. I think this is one thing that I keep coming back to when we talk about my history because of the move, right? And this question applies to high school, and I did move here right in the middle of a high school. So it's the beginning of 10th grade, which at first I didn't speak any English, right? So like there was a lot of things that I was not aware of. I was aware of things that were being said within my community, which was at that time a very conservative Christian evangelical community too. But through my experiences at high school, so we had to take these ESL classes right away to learn to speak English, me and my siblings. And it was a very diverse group. So for us, that meant great, awesome, we love it. There's cultures that we want to, learn more about. There's some that we knew about. So one thing that had happened by that point is that we learned to speak Spanish before we learned English, which is more. So we knew a bit when we moved here, and then because we didn't know a lot of English, we were watching Spanish channels. So the students who knew Spanish were the quickest for us to be able to have conversations with, and we became friends with them faster. But there was people, from India who we also, became friends there. There was some from African countries. I remember Nigeria being one of them. And I believe the other one was Congo as well. But again, same, that ESL class became very close knit, and I don't remember us talking too much about, where you're from in a derogatory way. All of us were immigrant here. Some of us knew more English than others, and we're all curious about our cultures. When we had, like certain like potluck event, we would all bring foods from our own countries, and I enjoyed that. But I was surprised to, find out quite soon that there was racism in this country, because that's not the image that we grew up with, right? So I think I mentioned before how when I was really young, I grew up in the country in a small village. We didn't have TV, so I didn't know too much about issues of race other than what we were, used to with gypsies in our culture. But as I was exposed to more American television, the older I grew, we could see that there was African Americans in movies, and they were cool, and these are actors that America loved, right? So when we came here and saw what's going on, I remember being quite shocked. And it was very soon, just moving here, and right away I was hearing and seeing things regarding these.
And I guess that was a shock to your system.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask her. I guess that was a jolt, seeing that. Mm.
How did people, the Americans, respond to, in your high school, to you and having an accent, so being different? What did you experience with that?
So there was a variety of responses, right? There was some students who were more curious and wanted to learn more. There was some of the students who realized that and wanted to be helpful. But there was also like a lot of eye rolls, right? And laughter when you're being asked a question and you're not fully sure how to answer, giggles, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And after, and I know we're talking about high school, but has that continued to be your experience even post high school?
So it's interesting. As time progressed, one thing that will probably not happen anytime soon is the accent won't go away, right? So
I like the accent.
I love it, man.
oh, thank you. Thank you. But yes, from work environments, not as much anymore. But you notice sometimes how there's a different reaction the moment they start to speak versus just sitting there, right?
Right.
Which I think, I remember doing some workshops on this conversation, and then we did a bit of that in the project where Sharon and I did together in school, right? But the experiences of immigrants of color versus immigrants who are white, right? And even immigrants who are Asian, the experiences are quite different, right?
Yes,
there might be some
definitely.
common things, and then there's some things are, extremely different. And like at times, in my experience, there's people who assume that because I have an accent and I'm European, I'm probably smart. I probably know a lot of languages, right? So there's that dynamic too. Whereas, and then a good portion of people expect me to prove myself before
Wow, yeah,
really taking me seriously as well. So there's both, right?
I can see that. Yeah.
Did people treat you better? Did you find once you started learning more and more English when you were younger?
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah. And I think a large part of it also at times, right, at least comes from like experiences, right, and like an education, right, because so pretty straight, through I went from like high school to college to a master's program to a doctoral program, right? So by the time I was I think I was 27 when I started the doctoral program, right? So people, not everybody knows in public, right? And it's not something I talk about all the time. But if we talk about the context of people who know me, right? I think over time and in work settings, because they knew a bit of my background and such, there's just a different level of treatment or
Right.
attitude that comes with that, right?
Well,
Right.
Sharon, how about you? Like, I mean, was it like did you feel that you had to prove yourself more when you went to certain like different, education levels? Did like you feel you had to prove that you belong there or anything like that? I'm just saying it on an
Mhm.
ethnic level, because I
Right.
do understand what Mariana is saying, because it's like people of color are less palatable than
Mhm.
people who look like them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When
Right.
when people are white, I can accept them because they look more like me. So the level of acceptance with people of color drops the darker you get. That's just my experience.
Right.
The
I,
Mhm.
darker you are. So when you went to high school and then your different degrees, how did you deal with that, Sharon?
Um, I've always been one of a few, just some context, one of a few, if not the only one, black person in my class. So in high school, I was one of 4 or 5, but it was only out of 16. In college, undergraduate school, I went to Penn State, so that's huge. But Penn State at the time, and we're talking 82 to 86, was 2% black out of a school that's got thousands of students, right? And then I went to Villanova for my graduate degree. I was the only black person in that class, and it was probably about 30 people in that class, 20 to 30. And in my doctoral program, actually, it's I think say 14 to 15 people, and it's predominantly black. There's like 7 or 8 women, and the rest are male and female, and they're white. So 5 whites to 7 or 8 females that are black. So that was my first educational experience, other than elementary school, because I went to an all black elementary school. This is my first experience educationally in upper levels of education with a predominantly black class. So now to answer your question, you know, in the background, I think 'cause I'm a different kind of person, but in the background, I always know that I
Mhm.
have to prove myself, but that's not the stance I take.
Right, right.
And I was wondering about that part, like what is it that you can sense what people do versus how much of that you take on, or how much is it affecting you?
Right, right. Well, sometimes it's things that people say that they don't even realize that they're saying.
Mm,
That I know that, it's those microaggressions. Like, wow, you speak so well.
mhm.
That's just such a funny
Or
one,
you're
you know?
smart. You're smart for a
Right.
black woman.
So it's
right.
like
What?
that lets me know that you don't expect
Right.
me to be
Mm-hmm.
of a certain level. Right now, I don't feed into it. I'm just going to be me
Right.
and where I fit in. If there's white students in the class who are smarter than me, so be it. I don't care. I'm not trying to outperform you. I'm just being me. Accept me for that, do or don't. I'm still going to be okay because I don't allow other people to have power over me. Because
Mm-hmm.
one, of the God I serve, Jesus Christ,
Right.
right? What's
Right.
for me is for me, and no one can take that away from me. So
Right.
I'm not competing with anyone. You
Mm,
don't like me, you don't like me. You're not going to promote me or do this. It's that's not in your hands. That's what
mhm.
God is going to do for me. Whether you do it or not, He's going to put me in position for someone to give me access, to promote me, whatever the case may be. So I don't really worry about that, although I know what's going on. I don't feed into it.
So
Um,
were you, I'm sorry to break in. So, but were you saved since you were a child? Or I mean, like, did you grow
no.
up in the church? The only reason I
I
asked that is
did grow up
because
in the church, but I didn't want to go to church. I went because I was forced and slept and
right.
whatever. So it wasn't like I had that spiritual connection. It was like
Right.
no, it was like you go to church or you get a beating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was like I went to church, but I had no connection. I only truly, Rosie, started being this spiritual when I came to Fresh Word and learned, Bishop taught about how to have a relationship with God. Now,
Right.
when I was in my 20s and went to church of my own volition, I still just went out of obligation because I was felt bad. I was like, man, I should probably get back into church. You know what I mean? But that's different.
And
You know what I mean?
the reason I asked that is because it wasn't until my 20s that I started going to church. So I never knew that what God had for me is for me. So I
Mhm.
always had to like I said, deal with the fact that when people would say, like, even at my job, when they say, do you know what you're doing? And I didn't know if they're saying, or even one time when I went to a job and it was 5 white men who approached me and I had my tools on and they said, do you know what you're doing? No, they said, how does it feel being a minority?
Oh.
And when they
Mhm.
said it, and that's why I asked that, Sharon, because I never grew up with that ideology of what God has for me is for me. I dealt with people saying, looking at me, and sometimes I played into it. I let them think I wasn't intelligent, and then
Mhm.
I'd snatch them up with what
Right.
I knew. And
Right.
even with those gentlemen, when they said, how does it feel being a minority? I immediately, because they were all white, I immediately went to the black thought.
Mhm.
And I was like, excuse me? And then they said, oh, no, no, no. We mean, how does it feel being a woman in a man's job?
Oh, wait.
Now, what they did not expect was for me to take my tools off and hand it to them. And they were like, well, what are you doing? I said, if it's a
Right.
man's job, you got this. You just let me know when you're done.
Right.
And they were like, well, we don't know how to do it. I said, exactly. It's for the job
Right.
for the
Right.
person who's trained. But the
Right.
reason I asked is because when you said that about, you knew what God has for you is for you. That is so important now that I'm saying, once I really started
Right.
learning that after getting saved, but I didn't grow up like that. So I never knew that. So,
Well,
you know,
I'm glad that you parsed that out because I did not have that understanding either in
right.
high school, or undergraduate school, or even
Mhm.
in my
Mhm.
master's program.
Right.
So let me clarify that. I know that now and have learned that in the past 16, 20 years. But even and known it from a spiritual perspective now,
Mhm.
past 16, 20 years. But before, I didn't put it in, may not have put it in the spiritual context because I wasn't saved and had the relationship with God. But I always knew that no one can take anything away from me. I never had a perspective that, oh, this person is white and I'm not going to be able to achieve, or because this person is whatever. I was always so confident, and then I'm going to get
You
whatever I'm
were.
going to get in life, and no one's
Mhm.
going to stop me. But
Right.
I do
Yeah.
believe that was God still put that in me. I just didn't have the God connection
Mhm.
at the time.
Right. Okay.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I walked into that, but He put that in me anyway.
Yeah. I
You
am
understand?
curious because, like I think I know what you mean, both of you, right? And
Mhm.
being like a Christian myself, I think I know where you're coming with some of that. And I also think that, I think God can have amazing things in store for all of us, and then some people try to take that away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we also, agreed that, I don't think God had slavery in mind, right, for people of color,
Mhm.
or for all these jobs to be taken away, right, for Black people to not be allowed for so many years to not live in certain spaces, right? So I guess I wonder, do you see it as like you do your best and then you find peace in knowing that, like, I am doing what's expected of me? Is that what you mean? But this phrase
Expected
of
of me God wise, or expected of me, or man wise?
yeah, but I wonder if there's times when they're quite interconnected, right? Because in some ways, us having these conversations, right, can open the door, and not just us, right? Not to like put us that this is,
Mhm.
the most important thing. Like conversations like this, and both white and Latino and Asian and African Americans fighting for a space, right, has allowed for people afterwards
Right.
to be able to build on that and to be able to go into those spaces, right? Um, so I'm curious about the distinction, right, between like I think this is God's work too, right? For at times to make space for
believe.
other people after us.
Yes.
And that's, what God wants us to do, so we can learn as humans to value equally
Mm-hmm.
everyone, right? I guess, does my question make sense between, I think God has beautiful things, right, in store for people of color, and then there's white people who
Yeah,
go
for
Right. I think
everybody,
still those
he
good
has
things.
things in store for all of us.
for
First of all,
man.
he created humankind, right? But those of us who have accepted Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior are his children, right? And so, if we walk in our purpose, the purpose with which we were created, because each one of us was created with a purpose. There's something that God created us to do in the earth. And when we find that out, we're unstoppable.
Yep.
Because that's why God created us. God is omniscient. He's all knowing. He's all powerful. He's all everything. Nothing can stop what God has already spoken into existence when the foundation of the world began with his mouth when he spoke it. He spoke everything that we are doing and will do.
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing can stop what I'm speaking of the four of us and believers, whatever, can do. Nothing can stop what he has purposed in us to do, as long as we line up with his purpose. Now we have free will, but if I say I am going to follow the will of God, no man, no entity can stop that, because that's what God purposed in me to do. That's why he created me. That's why he created you.
And what's so important with what
Man made color. God didn't make color. God made the human race. Man made a construct called race and put color on it, so therefore he could have economic power and privilege over other people. That's a man-made construct.
And even scientifically, race is supposed to be superficial, like color. People they say darker who were more in the sun, like because your skin adjusts, just like the Italians or and the Latinos, they were more in the Mediterranean and
Exactly.
And you grew toenails because they didn't wear shoes at first.
Right.
Those types of crazy things. And that's why it's all superficial. Because even if you go in the museums and, talk about science, that's what they talk about in terms of evolution. And it's a superficial thing. But all the construct around it, just like you said, Sharon, is man-made. They gave it connotation and battled, and groups started battling each other.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, Sharon, when you came to high school, or even in high school, and maybe this is for you too, Rosie, as a Black woman, did you see most everybody else as, okay, it's a white group, just like I talked about groups, or did you say, oh, and maybe you didn't, well, one girl's Italian or one, it's not like I talked about being Italian.
Right.
One, did you, how did you take in the color balance and what was happening?
Yeah, I because, and I'm going to say this, can't say this is expressly true, but I think Stephanie, where we went to school, we had a unique experience, excuse me. And I fit right in with the color groups, and we all fit in together. So there weren't cliques of blacks and whites. We all fit in together, and then we had our little separate groups, but they weren't cliquish groups. It's just because maybe we lived closer to one another in the neighborhood, just to say, or maybe we were on the same, we would play field hockey together. So then you're a little bit closer, whatever the case may be. But the 16 of us, we were rather close. And so I fit right in right from the beginning, and that, too, could be my personality, but others' personalities as well. Everybody seemed to be, fairly outgoing and, social and inviting. So I didn't have a negative experience. Now, within that being said, did I recognize race? Absolutely. But it wasn't so much anything so much perpetrated onto me, like you're Black and you're different and whatnot. Now, did I notice some things? Absolutely, but they weren't so glaring and so outrageous that it impacted me in such a negative way that I dislike white people, or anything like that. Like I think we talked. I know we talked about it behind the scenes, but I think we talked about it on one of the shows too. And of course it was me because I'm just so outspoken. I started a conversation during one of the breaks in high school that centered around race. I can't remember exactly what it was. I know we were in 11th grade, I believe. It was at the Bryn Mawr campus, Stephanie. 11th grade, maybe 12th grade, I'm not sure. And it just blew up. I mean, it was like a major argument. We were yelling.
Wait, I do remember a screaming.
Right. Yes, and so
more than usual because we would debate.
Because we weren't like that. And so the teacher came in. She couldn't quiet us down, and then she went. She didn't go get the headmaster. She didn't go get Mr. Breen, but she went to get somebody. And then they didn't think they might have threatened us or something. So we stopped, and it was like it's not like it didn't happen, but we went on as usual. It didn't cause any animosity or rift in our relationships. I did go home and tell my parents I wanted to leave the school and go to another school. I did do that. And of course, and I'm thankful that they didn't listen to me.
Right.
Because the bottom line is, I think they thought, not that they said, it doesn't matter where you go to school, you're going to school because you're Black.
Right.
And so just get over it. So that was my only experience when something blew up.
Right. I understand that. Yes.
Yeah.
As for me, like I said, I grew up in first of all, like I said, when we first moved on our street, they didn't want us there. So we grew up in communities with so many different races and mixed races, like, half Black and Puerto Rican, half white and Black. So it was never actually, I'm not going to say a race thing, an ethnic issue until people shoved it in our face.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't become an issue until they did that, because we grew up together. We were all friends. We went to each other's houses. We did things together. Now, we did as friends sometimes deal with racial words every once in a blue moon, because I remember my brother getting in a fight with a neighbor's kid, because of what he said and stuff like that. But the majority of the kids, because we were children and growing up together, we'd threw snowballs, we played frisbee, we played baseball, handball. We did everything together as we were growing up. So it's not until somebody makes the ethnic part an issue that we saw it, and like I said, and it's when people start calling you certain names and then you're like, what the heck? Why are they calling me that? And then that's when it starts, you start really learning, okay, there's a problem here. Right. They don't like me because of my color. They don't like me. They, treat me this way because of that. I mean, it's like we say, it's learned.
You learn, yeah.
Because as you grow up and you're playing together and you're having fun together and, you see each other as just friends.
Right.
The level of your complexion didn't mean a thing. We had fun. We were great. We were friends. And then it's not until you're in high school that it would start pushing the color code, I call it. You got a color code issue going on where people then start, if they were mad, then they call you out of your name. And they call you whatever ethnic slur that they can call you. And ours was, like I said, the N, Rican. So, and then you're like, what did you just call me? So that's when it started really becoming noticeable. It didn't become an issue, but it was noticeable that there was a problem.
I didn't have the negative experiences, like say overtly and just, like hurtful, let's just say.
Yeah, exactly.
I had those outside of my educational experience. I knew they existed, but within my education, even in, at Penn State, I mean, that's a whole other different experience. Not so much my friend group, but, people would be riding around on campus spouting the N word out their car. I'm talking about white people, apartheid was going on in South Africa at the time. They were building shanty towns, and, during that time at Penn State. So that was a whole different era, if you will.
Yeah,
so,
right.
My high school experience and my graduate experience and graduate school was from 1996 to 2000. You know, I was the only black person in the class, but you know, made friends with, you know, I'm not saying all of them because, you know, but you know, whomever the race didn't matter. And so I've always been able to have genuine, I'll say, relationships. I mean, if people are hiding, you know, their racism, they're hiding it well, or it's just, and they say, well, we go as deep as racism, their views that might be negative, but it may be more because they are uneducated to
Right.
some
Ignorant.
things,
Yeah.
right? So they aren't even aware. Versus
Right.
someone who is aware and like, I still don't like you regardless because you're
Right.
black.
And they're more
There's
media
a difference.
So, and
yeah,
I do want.
targeted. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, what'd you say, Steph?
No, I was saying, yeah, that some are more targeted and some just follow
Yes.
and they're
Right.
ignorant. I
Yeah.
want to throw in one other thing in my high school, which Sharon, you're more aware of. The other very hurtful thing, again, nothing was a tragedy for me. What I did learn, you know, you battled some things, you were a little hurt. And I learned as I got older that it was different with groups. I think my original feeling was, oh my God, we all have something to battle and we have to push through. But it did take me a while, once I kind of got out a little more in the world, to realize the skin color matters. You know, you're not thinking that because I don't think that. So I did learn that people do look at it differently and you are wearing it in a different way, you know,
Right.
and that took a while to learn. So when I was younger, I wouldn't have known that so much.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part that I was dealing with in high school was, and it was from acquaintances, maybe some in school, and outside, you know, schoolers around other boys and girls schools where Sharon and I went to school. There were a lot of that, some boys schools, some girls schools. They came over for fairs and sports. So that's how you interacted a little bit and plays. But they would say to me that they would either behind my back or somebody would tell me that my father, and I'm going to give him more background, was in the mafia. My family was in the mafia. And that upset me most out of everyone in my whole family. Like my brothers, they went to school with other Italians and they had each other, they were close in age and they would laugh at it. Or, you know what I mean? So not laugh. I mean, but they had each other. And I always was, that's where I felt a disconnect. And I was looking for Judy Van Dyke's mother's grandmother was half Italian because I wanted to know if they were called mafioso too. Like I was so, and even when Lil first came to school, I was like, do people call your father a mafia man? You know, and she was like, no. But she lived in an Italian community, and my father, just the quick background, was actually known in the city. He was a very successful man, but I must add, and I'm not just bragging, he won a lot of. It's important because this is to show how mean this was. He won a lot of humanitarian awards. He won an award from NCAA. We went to a luncheon. Like he was a very kind man. So when people were joking around that he was a murderer, I would fly off the handle. So I have been in some
I can imagine.
situation.
Do you think that part of do you think that part of that came from, I mean, who knows where it came from, because you know it's a lie, but because your father's business was in South Philadelphia and South Philadelphia is so associated with the mob?
Yes.
So has his business been somewhere else?
Yes.
Maybe
yeah.
that may not.
I think that all contributed. So, you know, there's the association. And in fact, this is a very fascinating fact, because again, people pick up things, so they hear it. So maybe I can't be mad, but then there are those who use it and run with it and target, as you all know. I was in London doing like an internship and in college, and there was a video about the mafia, and it ran down the street in the market and ran past my family's business. And the Londoners in London told me they saw, and I was like, what the hell?
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
And here I'm going all the way to London, and people are asking me if I'm in the mafia. I was so upset. I called home. You know, my sister's like, we told Dad to sue. You know, so they're all, and my father like never sued. He had so many opportunities. I wished he did for that, because that is so upsetting. Again, that's a random person. You don't just hear, okay, there's mafia in South Philadelphia, so you just take pictures of all the streets. That's terrible to do. So
Yes.
that is something I did battle, and that carry, I never, I have 1,000 stories. I'm not going to bore you, but I never, always handled it correctly, and I blew up
Mhm.
at dinner tables. So that was my Achilles.
Wow. That story that you told about the teacher, saying that to you, that is just
It's
that is
terrible,
like a stab in the heart.
right?
Mhm.
You
It's
know.
sad because, and then that's why when I even the Black Wall Street, I mean, there's so many parts.
Yes.
It's Black
Mhm.
history that gets under my skin so much, even from a personal level, because I understand when people are trying to take away your
Mhm.
success, and had
Yes.
those people with those words
Mhm.
had the support that the people at the Black Wall Street had, could actually, when we talk about Columbus and some of the Italian stuff, they did have some of those same thing, like they,
Right.
you know what I mean? They had to battle that kind of stuff, but that's
Mhm.
a terrible thing to take people down. It's jealousy,
Right.
and the Black Wall Street really upsets me to have all
Oh,
that success
tragic, tragic.
right
You know.
smashed away. That's pure evil.
Mhm.
I mean, slavery,
And not only the snatching away, but the killing,
the killing,
of
right,
of
to
those
destroy
who
it,
had the power, the killing
right,
of all of them and
right.
piling them up in the streets, and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
And as we
And
know,
just
that
the
starts with words, bad words,
and
right.
fear,
And for the teacher,
fear,
and fear.
Fear,
someone
right,
who
fear,
is
and
teaching
dehumanizing
you,
words.
right.
Right.
and
Teach
someone who
you,
is in a teaching position, an educating position, and calling you that derogatory
right,
slur,
right,
right? And making you feel however you felt less than, and
right,
like you said, trying to take away your success by demeaning you, so therefore you will think that you're less than, and you won't go on to fulfill your purpose. That is just
right,
that is just I mean, I can't even put a word on it. And someone who you looked up to.
right. That's why, because that's where it gets damaging.
Yes.
So, it's just a terrible thing when people take their superiority, and
Mm-hmm.
to
Mhm.
feel that way. They hurt others to have that
Right.
And
superiority.
even if they don't feel as much superior, they just want to make sure you feel inferior.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
keep you,
Mariana, you were
Mariana,
going to say
did
something?
you have to deal with anything like that level of like where people you might have felt that people were attacking you because they were more fearful of what you may know
right,
or your ethnicity, or you know what I'm saying? And like, did you have to experience? Because if you didn't, I say God bless you. That's a weight off, because when you have to battle your own mentality
Mm-hmm.
to agree, like when Sharon was talking about how she knew and she didn't care what people think. For me, I had to build myself to make sure I knew that I was somebody, and that
mm,
I had to, and thank God for Jesus, because learning who he was and having him in my life, even with him in my life, it took a process. It took years for
Right.
me to recognize that
mm,
don't let these people define you. Don't let
yeah,
them name you. Whatever they say, don't answer to it. And that was because I was somebody that I just had such a bad what is it called, like self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a lot of building for years once I got saved to realize that I'm not what you called me. I'm what God calls me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
right,
So it
right.
took
Yeah.
time.
And I am glad you're sharing this, Rosie, because I was curious to hear about your take on some of that when Sharon was talking about her experiences with that. Because ultimately, what I was hearing from you, Sharon, is that like you were where you could see them, right, and you're quick at even noticing them when these people might come from a race perspective, right? But you just don't
Hmm.
allow them to define you, right?
Exactly.
And
And
and Rosie,
that
you're saying
may be
that it took
because
a
of
long time to be able to.
I had to be honestly, I had to be in my late 30s,
Mm,
early 40s before it really hit me to
Mhm,
not respond. You
mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying?
right,
To be so comfortable in who I was and who I served and who was in me. But I had to be in my late 30s, early 40s before it started really clicking
mm,
that I don't, like I said, I don't have to respond to what they're calling me.
Mhm.
They don't name me. So do not respond to what they call you, because when you respond, that means you agree, or maybe there's something in you that feels that they're right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and I had to be in my late 30s, early 40s before I really got so comfortable in who I was that
Mm-hmm.
now you can say what you want, and I can act like I never heard you, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Hmm.
I
So
respect, to learn that later, and I'm happy that you have,
yeah.
because it is
Yes.
so horrible when people try to keep you down like that.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense, right? If we look developmentally, right, in our teens, and we
Mhm.
care about, we want, like, those are really the tasks we're working on emotionally and
Acceptance.
developmentally, to
Mhm.
Right.
develop relationships and to find our place in the world, right? So it absolutely
Right.
made sense that it took a while. And meanwhile, some of us may arrive at there a bit sooner than others. Yeah, let's hear this comment and then I'll return to
You want to
my.
read that? You want to read that, Mariana?
How have all of these experiences and encounters affected how you each treat new different people today? Ooh, that's a good one. So I
That's
will
good.
answer in the
Thank you,
context
Chad.
of what I wanted to say
Good.
here,
Yeah,
right?
say that. That's my
Um,
friend Chad.
oh,
Okay. Thank you, Chad.
yeah,
So go ahead,
yeah.
Marion.
So
Go ahead, Mariana.
I
yes,
want to hear.
Rosie, I would just say it absolutely makes sense. And it actually took me a few years, as well, approaching early 30s, like I am now,
Hmm.
to get closer and closer to that place. And I think it is a process of, at times, just, psychological growth too, right? Even though that has its ups and downs. At times, I agree with both of you. It's spiritual as well. But that doesn't mean that when we're young, that, spiritual, we weren't, you know, good enough or something like
Hmm.
that, because there's more to it, right? And when people for generations attempt to put your people down, it's just, you inherit that in many ways, right? It gets passed through DNA and you name it, right? Plus the experiences that you go through. So, for me, I think I shared a bit last week that, my Moldovan culture, compared to like other surrounding nations, were put down too, right? So that, I think the combination of that, with being raised, Baptist evangelical, which was only 2% of the population, in my home country, which meant we were, at times targeted for that. And I didn't experience it as much, because by that point people were a bit used to, like, okay, this is what Baptists are, because, by this point I was third generation Baptist. But my parents and my grandparents, right? So you take all of that, which to me, right, when, Chad is asking about those experiences and how do they affect me today, right? I sit here and I can hear all of your stories, and however you respond, it makes sense, right? Because we all respond through the lens of our experiences, right? And hopefully some of us were able to do some internal work to get to this point. I think, Rosie, sometimes I would question, right? Is it coming from a place of, there was a lot of growth, but sometimes I wonder, if there's a bit of giving up, and like wanting to protect your peace too, right? And saying, I'm not going to engage that, because
Yeah.
it's fine. The Bible in the same book says in Proverbs, right? Don't answer a fool, right, according to their foolishness.
Answer
And
not a fool, right?
but then in that same context, says do ye answer a fool, right, according
Mm.
to. So it's like, which one is it? And I think hopefully with time we can gain wisdom to know, like, I can engage in this one, and hopefully I can educate this person a bit, where I can hold them accountable a bit, right? Or I'm just gonna waste my time here and then I'll walk away without, so I hopefully that's where we get to with time, right? Learning to recognize, you know.
And what you're saying, it made me think of that saying, and I hope I say it right, but where it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And
Yeah.
Prayer.
that's where it comes in. There are some people, and to what Chad was asking about, like, how does it affect us when we meet people today? Chad, to be honest with you, I've all of my life, especially like working at a utility company and working on phone lines and cable and stuff like that, I've been in and out of so many people's houses, so many different ethnicities houses, that I love meeting everybody. I've never had a problem, even as a child, meeting people. I've always liked meeting people, and till even when it felt like, I think when people didn't accept me, it was a challenge for me to make them to change their mind and make them see different. Because I remember I had a friend, and her husband, he had one time, like we were watching a show, and his son wanted to watch the show, and it was a black show, and when they showed back in the day, when they showed black people, you were either a drug dealer, a drug addict, a prostitute, all the positions you have, you were either you were never anybody that had money. You were never anybody that were looked up to. And I remember my friend's, the young boy's father, he was like, see that, look at them. See, they're all no good. And I looked at him, I said, excuse me. What are you saying? Oh, not you. You're different. And see, that's where the problem comes. Just because you got to know me, I'm the different black person. But all other black people act like what somebody showed you on a screen. You see it on the screen. It's depicted that's what all of us are by what they show you on a screen. That's not who we are. And I told him, I said, when he said, well, you're not like them, I said, I am them. We don't act like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said, this is what these movie people are projecting and making you think, but that come to my neighborhood, this is not how we act. And it's like that. Sometimes you got to defend that aspect of it. But Chad, it doesn't matter who I meet. I love meeting people. I love having conversations with people. I love learning new things with people and learning about them and their situations. And I mean, I did live for a while, and I had little kids of different ethnicities, their parents telling their kids, calling me auntie, because I would have fun with the kids in the car. I would give out cookies to kids, and Christmas time, I'd hand out little gingerbread men to the kids. And so, some of the, kids, the innocent kids, see you just as a nice person. And the one little girl, she was like, Mommy, my friend's coming. She'd come out, jump in my car, and she'd get her little gingerbread cookie. So, it just, e pluribus unum. Out of many nations, that's who we are.
Yes.
And, for me, I've always continued the foundation that was laid for me. And in reference to Chad's question, even though I have learned more as I've gotten older, obviously, about race, racism, etc., I've never left the foundation, that, I was raised in regarding, we're all the same. But some people will treat you differently, but that doesn't mean I'm supposed to treat them differently. And so it's just more solidified as I began to walk in my my Christian life, with the Lord, that regardless of how people treat me, it's not a tit for tat. I'm supposed to represent Christ at all times if I call myself a Christian, since I call myself a Christian. And so I'm a Jesus representative in the earth. So I treat people the way I believe Jesus treated people, with kindness and respect. But, what I will do is share wisdom, maybe when they may say something off color or do something, like Mariana is saying, recognizing when and when not to speak to a fool, right? So, sharing wisdom to maybe have this person gain insight, and you never know where it's going to fall. But all I am to do is to plant. God grows it up. That's what his word says, right? So I plant the seed of wisdom, and then hopefully God will grow it up and make it increase in them. But that's not my job. My job is just to plant the seed, right? Even in a foolish heart, let's just say, because you never know what God is going to do with that seed in that person. So is it hurtful? Sure. Sometimes more than others. Does it, cause me anger, sadness, depression, angst, all of that at any given moment? Absolutely. But I'm not going to start hating white people. I'm just not going to do that, because one, it's not all white people, and two, that's just not who I am. I don't hate just because you hate. So I treat people the way I want to be treated. I treat people with respect and kindness. Now, that's not to say when you show me who you are, I believe you, which meaning when you show me who you are through your behavior, because you can say what you think I want to hear, but you behave differently. Your behavior is the truth of where your heart is, right? Now, that doesn't mean I'm still going to have to maintain the same relationship with you that I may have had before. Say you betrayed me in some kind of way. I'm not a fool. So now I have to determine where I place you in my life, but that does not mean that I hate you. It does not mean I wish you ill will. That just means you're unhealthy for me. So I have to place some physical, mental, emotional distance between us because you're unhealthy for me.
Right.
And that might just be for a season because maybe you grow or whatever. But for right now, maybe we can't speak as much. For right now, we can't see each other as much. But that does not mean that I wish ill will or I hate you or anything like that. I'm just doing what's healthy for me and my growth and my sanity.
Right.
So that's where I come from.
You have to categorize people. You have to, because if not, you're going to run into a problem if you don't categorize people, because, when you find those people that intentionally, you got people who intentionally hurt you, you got people who ignorantly hurt you, and then you have people that understand you and they're not trying to. And like Sharon said, it wasn't when I got sick. I always felt that I always liked everybody and treated everybody right. And if I hurt your feelings, I would start crying. I was always a people pleaser. If I hurt your feelings, it hurt me more than it would hurt you. So I was always a people pleaser, which was very damaging to me. Because I would accept the treatment of people.
Right, because
I wanted to make sure they weren't upset. I had to make sure that they were okay. Right. And if I did something but they didn't like it, then I had to change it because I got to make sure they're okay. And growing up trying to be a people pleaser and hurting when I thought I hurt people, that's just as damaging as if people were disrespectful or called me out of my name, because I had to learn that my feelings meant as much as their feelings meant, and that I didn't have to feel bad in order for them to feel good.
Right.
So it's I need counseling. I'm gonna get me.
I
but
Rosie. Yeah. No, I so when you're asking earlier that question, yes, all over all of that, right? And it does. This is where some people are able to do like early 20s, and then there's some of us like me and you who took us late 20s, early 30s, early right, because we have to learn, right, that if somebody treats us poorly when we were young, I think some of us really thought that meant I didn't do something enough, or I need to do more, right? And we just have to learn that how people respond and treat you is nothing about you, right? On some occasions, sure, if we're being rude and people are, responding back. But as Sharon said, right, how we treat people stems from our own heart. Therefore,
exactly.
Exactly.
And unless you're doing something that, like Marianne said, excuse me, Stephanie, that that you did something to someone, and and so therefore maybe they're responding to you based on that, even though they don't have to, because that's a tit for tat. But okay, when people are, there's a little counseling insight, when and this really sheds a light bulb when I tell people this in counseling, even though we kind of know it, but we don't think of it when we're in the emotion of something happening. All of us, every human being living, we are acting out our issues on other people every day.
Right.
That's why I can do something to you when you have not done something to me. And you're like, why? Like, why is she treating me like that? But it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's my stuff.
Right.
My unresolved issues.
And you know what
happen to be in the past
And you know what, Sharon? I love when our pastor says, if you have an issue, it's you.
Mm.
When you have an issue, it's you. It's you. And that word issue mean, when she said that one year, I was like, yo, and I even said that to somebody one time because they were arguing with me. I said, you really have an issue about this, don't you? You have an issue? Yes, I do. Yes, I do have an issue about it. I said, it's you. It ain't got nothing to do with me because I don't have a problem with what you're complaining about. It's you. Yeah. And man, that person was like, I said, oh, ain't got nothing to say now, do you?
So when you look at things from that perspective, because a lot of times when people do stuff to us, or we have trauma, from our past, and we're still holding on to that, and we're looking at that person who perpetrated that trauma on us,
right?
We're hating them and we're mad at them, and it keeps it going, right? Even though the incident is way in the past. But if you begin to think about it in a way, and not that this takes it away right away, but it helps as you're going through your process. That person, we're all broken, we're all damaged, right? That person is damaged in a way that they damaged you. It wasn't about you. It could have been Jane, and that person would have done the same thing to Jane.
Right.
It wasn't personal. That person may have been abused too. That's why they abused you.
Yeah.
So in your work of forgiveness, understand that they had a problem. They were ill.
So are they projecting, Sharon?
To me?
They're projecting, Sharon? So what it is are they projecting? Like
it's not so much of a projection. It's just that hurt people. I know you heard
yeah.
I mean, projection is an issue, but that's not everything.
Right.
That might not be a projection. It's just that I'm hurt and I'm going to hurt you because the person who hurt me, I can't take it out on them. Like bullies in school, grade school, probably something going on at home, but they can't do anything with their parents, right? If their parents are abusing them, they can't abuse their parents because they're kids. So what do? I find the person who I think is a weak link at school. I take out my anger and frustration on him or her. Right?
Right.
It's not about that child that's being bullied.
Yeah.
It's the bully's issue because he's got unresolved issues probably from his home life.
Right. Yeah. And which in some cases, Rosie, absolutely is projection, but I guess as Sharon is saying, there's other things too, right? Yeah. And you're getting at this in many ways, Sharon, by even bringing abuse into the equation. But as I want to bring this up, that like a lot of this times when we talk about someone having an issue, it's usually that person that we are excluding people in current cases of any form of abuse, right? Domestic violence and that sort, right? Because in those cases, when people
or mental, emotional, or physical abuse, any type of abuse.
Yeah.
But if we talk about other levels of how people respond, it doesn't have to do.
It's not all just abuse. I just threw the word abuse out there, but there's anything. If you haven't done anything wrong, this person cusses you out. Where is that coming from? That's coming from something that's unresolved in them. It doesn't have to be trauma related or abuse related, but it's something. Maybe they're mad at their boss at work. And out on you, because a lot of people take their work, bring it home, and they give it to their kids, their wife or their husband, right? Has nothing to do with them. It's work stress.
Right.
But what I do, I take it and give it to my family. It has nothing to do with the family.
Like you said, that person doesn't want to get fired, so
exactly
they know who to attack and who can't have any kind of who can't do anything back.
Right.
So,
my family's going to always be here. They're going to stay, for the most part, I can dump it all on them and they'll still be here for the most part. Now, not that that's right. And not that that's even conscious thinking, because I was not conscious. I'm feeling a certain way. So I'm now behaving a certain way. When I should have your feelings. Feelings are valid. You can't explain all of them. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what you do after the feeling that's the issue. So what we need to do is, okay, let me see how I'm going to deal with this issue at work, right? And then assertively deal with it with my coworker or my boss. There's a way to handle it. You're just not doing it and using your family as the scapegoat.
Sharon, okay, I didn't mean to laugh. You made me think of something like when I was dealing with a racial issue at my job with a boss, and I had to laugh at myself because I probably didn't handle it quite as well as I could have. And he came to my job. He was racist, and I can say it because I'm not saying what it was, who it was, where it was, and all of this stuff. But we were having issue with this boss, a racial issue, and I actually kept saying, listen, you got a problem with us. You're racist. Da-da-da. I told him, I said, you're racist. He said, well, my kids don't think I'm racist. I said, your kids? Did you really say your kids? I said, dude, I'm telling you, you're a racist. The way you're talking to me and this and that. And then he said, and this is why I said I probably should have handled it a little bit better. But then he said, well, I talk to my wife the same way I talk to you. I said, and you're abusive too. I said, you and your wife need to go to counseling because you're abusive, mentally abusive to your wife. I said, so you got a race issue and you got an abuse issue to your wife. And, and he was looking at me and I was like, listen, just go on. Let me get my job done. Leave me alone. But, I probably, I was like, ooh, thank God I had a union with my job because you could have fired me the next day. But you can't fire me because you came in trouble with me at the job. The union would have had that. But, it's like it made me laugh because when you said it's the way you handle it and you have to sometimes talk to them assertively. But I was like, you're racist and you're abusive. Deal with it.
No, you called it right out.
Right.
What it was.
Stephanie, you had a comment earlier.
Actually, no, Mike. Well, yes, I had a comment, but I just wanted to sort of piggyback on what you were saying, Sharon, about you coming into high school. I just wanted to testify that Sharon was so nice when she came in, fit right in. I did say that last week. Very smart. Sharon was considered one of the smart girls too in the class.
So was Stephanie.
And I liked her so much. And I did want to say that. And she was confident. And I actually was drawn to that in you, Sharon, because I liked confident girls. I mean, that was inspiring to me. And Sharon was definitely one of those women. So young girls and women today, clearly. So I did want to throw that out there because I can speak to that. I watched it all.
Thank you. And so just since we're there, even though I may have been that way, if others, Stephanie and others, because I came into the school, they were already there.
Yeah.
If they weren't who they were, accepting, loving, kind, or whatever, then regardless of how I was, I would have gotten pushback, right?
Yeah.
And I probably would not have felt accepted. And things would have been different, but because of who they were, and their personalities, and obviously because of their home life, right? Because that's where it starts. It worked. It just really worked. Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. No, we were lucky. And there were some
other experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to laugh.
It's high school. High school, some things.
Yeah.
And it's not like elementary school when it's kumbaya.
Right. Right. Exactly. We learn real things.
Right. Exactly. So it was a good experience. Great question, Chad. Thank you so much for that. Stephanie, you want to answer Chad's question?
Yes. I think to just comment, I actually may have answered it a little bit earlier because I think the biggest change for me was kind of thinking every ethnic group, and now I'm considering Black people in that statement, that everyone kind of, and this is when I was younger, had a certain battle to push through, and we just all had to deal with some crap, pardon my French.
Right.
But as I did get older and out in the world, I did see some treatment that I couldn't believe. If I, was with a Black girlfriend where I knew they had been nicer to me at the restaurant when I was alone. And things like, I think I had told you stories where my girlfriend said a Black girl would never walk out without a receipt. As I started to take in more of those experiences, the skin color, I mean, I know seems obvious, but it's not when you don't think that way. You know what I mean? Right. I don't think that way. So why would I think other people would really, really target based on the darkness. And just quickly to that end, I'm kind of veering off your question, Chad, because I did sort of answer it before. That's the biggest thing I learned. I don't know that it changed my treatment so much of people, because I think I'm a pretty nice person and I always wanted to treat people well, but it changed my understanding. So maybe I just listened a little better. Maybe that's how the treatment changed.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if you all know this, but I'm quite sure Sharon understands it. But when we deal with racism and how people look at each other, even in the Black community, there's Black on Black racism too. So don't just think it's just for white people or Asian people, because I remember hearing when my mom or somebody said, my mom, somebody said that they were told, don't bring no boots in my house, which meant don't bring anybody dark in here. You see what I'm saying? So even back in the day, there were levels of acceptance, even in the Black community. Still is. Thank you, Sharon, right there. But there's levels of exception. The darker you are down that paint shade thing, but the darker you are
today.
Yeah, the darker you are, then people got a problem with you, and if you're really dark, how they act. If you're really dark, you got to be really good looking. You got to be really beautiful to be accepted. Because other than that, I'm not trying to be nasty, but if you're really dark, then you're a monkey.
Right. No, that is.
You know what I'm saying? So there's levels.
Yes.
We all have to deal with our own demons, and we have to be able to see it for what it is. Again, like Sharon said, thank God for Jesus.
Right.
That helped me. He taught me, I think I told you ladies, but he taught me a valuable lesson because, Chad, when I meet people, I accept people for who they are. And I'm saying that to you, Chad, because when I was a young girl, up until I was 13, I thought I was Black. I didn't know I had a Puerto Rican father. And I had an issue with some of the Puerto Rican girls. And it kind of made me feel some type of way towards Puerto Ricans. But when I found out who my dad was, I was like, are you kidding me? And I was thinking to myself, I'm one of them. But what happened is God let me know something. He said, don't judge people because you don't even know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a valuable
lesson. That was literal.
And yes, and that's such a valuable lesson at 13, 14, that I was able to carry that for the rest of my life, to accept people for who they are. Because if you don't even know who you are, then how you judging somebody else? Why don't you check yourself first? Find out who you are. Get to know yourself. Getting to know you. I had to get to know me. I had to look in the mirror.
Rosie's a singer, by the way.
A little bit.
I had to. We just found that today.
I had to look in the mirror and get to know me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me, for the rest of my life, never have a problem with anybody of another ethnicity, because I had to learn a valuable lesson that I was not accepting of my own people, my father's people. Mm-hmm. And when I found out who I was, I said, never again. I'm not going to be caught there again.
Right.
I'm not going to be caught there again.
Yeah. But I do wonder with some of this stuff. I think there's various reasons why people do what they do, right? And these are the final 2 points that I'll make, seeing the time. But one, Rosie, when you're describing sometimes parents telling, and families of color, right, not to bring someone darker, I wonder how many times that's coming out of a place of fear for their grandkids and wanting to protect, right? To say, like, I know how this world can be, right?
Yeah,
with our own people, but then going to the right societal level of white people, right? Which then I do wonder, along with that, Sharon, if that does tie back to some of your experiences being a lighter skin Black woman, And as Stephanie even said, right, like you came and right away people could see that you're smart and educated and and fit a certain description, right? For them to like become accepting. And what would it look like if the Black girl that came had much darker skin, was middle of the class or lower,
Exactly.
What would that look like?
Right. I don't know how my experience, I only know what I've experienced. Yeah. But might it have been different? Absolutely. Absolutely. If I were darker skinned, for sure. But again, I only know what I've experienced, but based on history and how we know things are, I'm sure maybe a darker skinned female Black female may have had a more difficult time, had some other microaggressions, racial slurs, whatever. Even within our own community, because again, I'm on the lighter side. So our darker skinned hued Black women and men have a little more difficult time because of colorism. We've gotten better as we've become more accepting of ourselves, because we've learned about, because with Black people, we were brought over here, right? So we didn't know our history. We just know what we were taught, and we were just bad, right? We were animals. We weren't people. We weren't human.
We weren't human, no.
So as we've learned our history, that we come from kings and queens and things of that nature, our self-esteem has risen over the years because we've gotten in touch with our roots. So we don't accept everything that has been taught to us over the years in America. Yes, we have been indoctrinated into this American white supremacist patriarchal society, and so we all have been indoctrinated into that, and so we all have some of that mindset. You cannot not have some of that mindset, right? How much it comes out in our day-to-day is where the difference lies, but we're all indoctrinated into that mindset. And so how we move based on that indoctrination, plus our own let's step aside from that and allow myself to be educated and grow from how I participate in life myself with my own learning, or what I choose to take up and learn, because what I see doesn't make sense, is not right, and this is not the end all to be all. This is someone else's belief that they're trying to get me to believe, and I see now, and not just now, but as you grow and you learn, it's like that. No, that's not it. That doesn't work.
And Sharon, even when you say that, dealing with Christianity, I mean, how many for centuries we've seen a picture of Jesus Christ in Black homes, blonde hair, blue eyes.
No, it's still that.
We know. First of all, he's Jewish.
Right.
So you're wrong right there.
Right.
Okay. So
it's just like everything else. Everything is made white that's supposed to be good.
It's made palatable. Palatable.
Yeah. I want to comment more on that colorism and shading thing, because I think it has roots even deeper, and it touched upon other worlds, not as much as your world, but the whole Aryan race thing. Back, in the 40s and 50s, first of all, flour itself was bleached white, along with some other foods, because white foods were fashionable.
Yes.
Do you understand? So white. You have
and sugar. Sugar
was dyed, same thing, right? So there are a few foods, that was one thing, but white itself, white, light, like even growing up, the TV people. Now, for me, again, this is not a tragedy. They were blonde. Cheryl Tiegs, Christy. Farrah Fawcett, Linda Smith. The bit of my era, my generation. Those were the women on TV. And in fact, I remember when Cher, with her long dark hair, I was like, wow,
I love Cher.
Right.
I love Cher.
I love Cher.
I love Cher.
Once, I was like, there's a perfect. Right. I was like,
and I love Cher, everything about Cher, because not only was she a brunette, she was taller than her man. I mean, she had Everything was opposite for her.
And her
I was like,
personality,
oh,
she didn't care. She had her own personality.
There were those rumblings, we never had that. But again, I'm going to say, like, even growing up, again, I had certain cultures say to me, I would like to date you, but I can't marry you because you're an Italian. I mean, I'm like 14 years old. I'm not even thinking. So again, I don't care. And I knew they dated blonde girls. Again, that's okay. Preference is fine, type. But that was another thing in my mind, of not being accepted. Again, I didn't, it didn't wear me down, but it was just this little thing, like, really?
You're right.
So, but that whole light thing and the coloring, it just, that's another thing that makes me sad. Like, now that you have highlighted it, because I didn't really think it existed in your race now. I think I had heard rumblings, as you reminded me.
Sure.
And it makes me sad if I see like a very dark Black person. Like, now I really think about it, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope that and I think in my head, I hope they don't have low self-esteem. Like, I can't believe it, that would be a thing to feel ashamed about.
Now, and then Stephanie, even within the Italian ethnicity, the darker skinned Italians were, within your own race, were looked down upon more so than the lighter skinned Italians, right? Like the Italians from, say, Sicily versus the northern Italians. Am I right?
No, that can be a tricky thing.
Okay.
Yes and no. Maybe it depends where you are. I think it's a little bit, it is only associated with regions. So in other words, that might be like, because they're Sicilian. Now, maybe if someone is a little darker or something, but they had different empires. So it does come more from where you're from, because it could work the opposite too. Because even I remember when we went to Italy and I was little, and I had the duck haircut, the duck bowl, the Dorothy Hamill, and I actually am more fair than my family. I'm a little lighter, I have light eyes. And they would laugh in my face and say to my father, so that's the opposite. Actually, I was a little lighter for them. And they would say to my family, in Italian, oh my God, she has the American flag on her face. So it depended what group. I don't know. Maybe yes, very, very dark, but it's not necessarily a big thing.
So that's in Italy you're talking about, right?
Right.
So what about in America?
So in America, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I have only been teased a little bit for being a little lighter.
Okay.
Even though my hair is dark. So I could be missing the boat, because I did grow up in a non-Italian neighborhood, and I went to a non-Italian school.
Right.
But in my experience, I haven't heard that so much.
So let me tell you what I've heard.
But you tell me, right? Because I could be missing.
When I was younger, I heard that Italians, the darker Italians, were basically white N's, the N word. Like, that's how they're thought of within their own community.
Wow.
The darker you are, you're basically just like N's, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah.
I never heard that. It doesn't mean it's not true. Like I didn't grow up in an Italian neighborhood.
So that would be interesting. I don't know if you have any.
It could be. I'm going to ask around.
You could ask and see. I don't know where I heard that, but it was like, it's colorism within, your own culture, like.
I mean, in
ours.
Right, a group of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, sometimes it does matter, like, personal experiences with some of this stuff too, because Sharon, as you were saying earlier about the current program that we are in being predominantly of color, I went through a few different cohorts within the same program, and more or less that has been my experience here, that, we have quite a large number of African Americans in our program, and some Africans too. There was a person from Africa in my cohort. But it was through a lot of your experiences, and because we can have these conversations in classes, right, that I've heard things like that, colorism, some of the textbooks, and as we read, our diversity book, I remember reading about that happening in Italian communities, Stephanie, that and others as well, right? So this seems to have been an experience for many people and over many generations, that for some reason, as human beings, like to take human shades and attach value to that.
Mhm. Because of what we have been indoctrinated into. I don't believe we
Absolutely.
would have, like you said, children, young children, they don't think like that.
No.
This is something that we are taught. We learn this.
And we learned that it's associated with
Right.
power. That's another.
Right. Power and privilege.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the little videos where like a little blonde boy was telling everyone that like his black friend is his twin brother, or you know, like what.
I love that. I love that one.
So
And
adorable.
then those, not only that, but the video of the little black boy coming down the street and the little white boy coming down the other end,
Yeah,
and they
with
run
that
to each
trend.
other and hug each other, and then they hold hands
Yeah.
and start running. So
Yeah.
again, we know that this mentality, it's a learned thing. It's not natural.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah,
natural.
and I've seen it. I've seen it, and
Right.
some of my nieces and nephews being young kids and observing them. Right. One of them, her best friend, they just recently moved, but when they were here in the area, was a little black girl, and she came home and she was telling us that she wished she had brown skin. And then others, will go to public places like parks and other things like that, and they start playing with, black kids or, Hispanic
Right.
kids, you name it. And like 10 minutes later, they're running around holding hands and,
Mhm.
like they would do with,
There's no right. See, same for me from first grade. There were black girls in my class. Sharon wasn't there yet. And that's my first experience. And in fact, Sharon, Mrs. Pavarou, one of our teachers,
Mhm.
when she tracked me down on Facebook, the first thing she wrote me, and she said, how's Shelly, a black girl we went to high school with, Sharon and I went to grade school with her. And she said, I'll never forget in first grade, the first time I saw the two of you holding hands, the back of your hands running. Like, so that's exactly right. And that's why I do feel
Right.
because we were
Mhm.
so young, and it doesn't matter then. And that's where
Right.
it should start, because there's no way you learn all that baloney.
Right.
It's natural to, have fun and play. And
Mhm.
so
I think too, Stephanie, now that you mentioned that, because I don't ever really recall, because maybe I just don't recall, because I came in 8th grade. I knew you all went to school together, not just you and Shelly, but others
Allison, yeah.
from an earlier time. But I didn't know it was from kindergarten or 1st grade on. And so
Yeah.
probably be now bringing my experience into it, because you all matriculated together, blacks and whites, from such an early age.
Exactly.
Therefore, when I came into the high school situation, you guys still weren't recognizing color as an issue, because you all grew up together.
Exactly.
So it was no big deal. So when I come in, it's just another person coming into our group. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and we're
Right.
used to all colors. Let's just
Another one of us.
say.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it was from 1st grade. And in fact, my mother used to keep me out from school late. So I always started late. And the first two girls, when I was in 1st grade, Shelly and Allison, came right up to me, want to play? And that's it. We were friends the whole, so
Okay.
that was my first entry. And that's right. When you came in, you were just one of us.
When did Cheryl come in?
So Cheryl came later. I thought
Okay.
later in grade school, earlier than you,
Right.
but like 5th grade, sixth, something like that.
Right. Okay.
Allison, Shelly, and I were early on, and then there were a couple other black girls young with us. Then they left, and then maybe a couple other black girls came here and there. But then we graduated with 5. I just remembered it was you,
Right.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, me. Look at me. You,
And you know what? I didn't even catch it until you
identify with you.
That's so funny.
But it was you,
one of them, Stephanie.
Cheryl, Allison, Colleen. So I know I do. That's what I mean. We were like a group. It was you and me.
Right. But no,
But
we're
yeah,
all
it
one.
was
We're all one.
great. I
Good.
loved it. That's why I feel lucky, So
Yeah.
I want the whole world to start from 1st grade, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Would be nice. Would be nice.
Be real.
Well,
So this
ladies,
is a great conversation, ladies, as
yes,
always.
it is.
You
Yeah,
know, I learned a lot, about each of you,
yeah.
more than I've known. Even though you and I have known each other the longest, Stephanie, I learned some things that I didn't know. So I appreciate all of you sharing. And
Yeah.
this is the beauty, of this dialogue. That we all have our different experiences, different opinions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if we stop fearing having the conversation about race, we could get so much further. Because me learning about you learning about me, it's like, oh wow, it's not something to fear. It's just something to learn.
Right.
And it's like that just gives me insight into you, and it's like, wow, what an experience.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the
Yeah.
experience.
So we're showing the world how to do
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
a safe place to have the hard conversation.
Hard conversations.
Any parting words, ladies?
No, I just enjoyed the whole conversation, and I think, like you all said, and like you said, Sharon, today I think we delved into some really personal experiences and things like that that all of us probably said, "Wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow,
Right.
wow." So I think it's good. I think it's good because it allows other people to be able to speak their truth and talk about,
Right.
the way they see things and how they were taught,
Mm-hmm.
and not be afraid to say, "Okay, I was wrong. I saw that wrong. I was taught
Or I
wrong.
was misinformed
I was
or miseducated.
misinformed. I was misinformed."
And how much can we all say about that?
And we lose so much. We lose so much when we
Mhm.
aren't willing to learn.
Right.
We really lose out a lot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
So hopefully when people see us having this conversation, even if they don't comment or ask questions, but their takeaway is, they're going to go and start their own conversations with other people and
Mhm.
share their experiences to broaden this, conversation to make a dent
Right.
in,
Right.
in this area. So which
Right.
would be wonderful.
Right.
So Stephanie, Mariana, any parting words?
No.
Yeah,
just the same.
this is yeah, a good conversation.
All
It's
right.
great.
All right.
Great, ladies. So we are back on not today was replacing next week, which would be the first Thursday of the month, right? So we're not on that week. We're on the 21st. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes. Right.
Okay. So just want to make sure I'm on track so I can let the audience know. I gotta check with the ladies. They keep me on track.
We keep her in line.
So the 21st, typically we're on the first and third Thursday of the month, but next week we can't be because I'm going to be away. And not away, I have residency for school. And so we opted for this Thursday instead. So we will be back on the third Thursday of October. Can you believe tomorrow's October 1st?
First, the
Crazy.
first.
The 1st. So we'll be back on October 21st, Thursday at 6 p.m. We may be fiddling around with our time and our day. And Stephanie and Rosie, Mariana and I were talking about this before you guys got on tonight. So this is the first you're hearing of it, but we'll talk behind the scenes. We may be fiddling around with the time of the day. But right now, the Thursday, the 21st of October at 6 p.m. is our next show. So stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube, as well as subscribe. So you
And join the conversation too.
we're on. Exactly. Join the conversation. It's a safe place to have a hard conversation.
Yes.
We love you. God bless you. Have a great 2 weeks, and we will see you then. Shalom.
All righty. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.